It is good to be worshiping together today. We are so glad that you guys are joining with us. Claudia and the praise band, thank you guys for leading us in worship this morning. Whether you are at home, whether you're on the green in your car or in this worship center this morning, we, because of the nature of who we are, being spiritual beings that have been resurrected, given life by Jesus Christ, we worship together. We never forget the words when Jesus spoke to the woman at the well. He said, it is my Father who worships in spirit and truth, and he honors those who do the same thing. It is not based on a location, it is based on our connection to Jesus Christ. This new series that we're in called Step Back, we've kind of looked at this idea of how do we root and ground and anchor ourselves in the truth of Jesus Christ. Now last week we said there's this conflict between a lie and a truth. And maybe I should say it this way, a lie and the truth. And we're going to keep comparing those two things. But last week we said there are moments when fear sets in and the lie says we are all alone. And what does Jesus Christ say? I am with you. And so here's the thing. If fears continue to go unchecked, if we don't step back into the truth of who Jesus Christ is, then those fears begin to do something to us that we were never designed to live in. It puts us in a situation that is completely unnatural for us, but has a tendency to overwhelm us. So let me take you back a few years. My family, we go on vacation. We like to do some things. Now, my family is not daredevils. We don't do dangerous, crazy things like jumping off the sides of mountains or jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. In fact, I've never jumped out of an airplane. But every once in a while, we'll do something that's a little bit adventurous. And so we took a trip with our family, and we had kind of scheduled a few things here and there, but there was one particular activity in this particular vacation that we were all excited about, but we had never done before. And so as we made our plans, we set our reservations, we prepared, we got our bank account ready for this vacation, we included this activity, and the day came to go on this excursion, if you want to call it that, to do this activity. Now, let me just back up about 8 hours previous to that, 10 hours previous to that. I'm getting prepared for bed. The next morning, we're getting up early. We're going to travel out to a location. We're going to take a boat and out into waters and do this incredible activity. But here's the problem. As I laid in bed that night, there's this reoccurring activity going on in my brain. And remember, we said that fear is a real thing, like me standing in front of a bear. That's something I should be afraid of. But this was weird because I'm in bed, which is a very safe place, and the house is locked down for the night. We're in a safe neighborhood. We're on vacation, but it's a safe place, and the house is calm and peaceful, and everybody's in their beds, and hopefully, kind of like the sugar plums dancing around, they're just having good dreams. But I'm laying in bed, and I began to think, what if? How do I do this? What happens if this takes place? And all of a sudden, you've ever been there, it kind of begins to snowball, and this conversation continues to go on, and I begin to have not only conversations, but visions. Now, I know you're probably sitting there thinking, Pastor, you got some problems, man. If you're having not only conversations, but this slideshow play out, and it's like you're role-playing in this video of what could happen, what might happen, what will happen, then you got problems. And I guarantee you, all of us have been in that situation, right? I'm not in a dangerous place, but I feel the danger. Now, let me just say this morning, if you've been there, then what happens is that continues to go on. And we begin to have this difficult conversation. It begins to sometimes even go darker and deeper, and it begins to prey upon unresolved fears, maybe. So I want to show you what that looked like as we were getting ready to do this activity on our vacation. This is what it was. So the four of us are in underwater scooters. We're probably maybe 3 meters down, about 9 feet. We're in these plastic air-operated scooters. We've got an air bubble underneath the helmet here. You can't really talk to anybody, but we're all trying to mouth and make hand signs. And we can propel forward. We can propel backward. We can drop down a little bit. We can come to the surface. We can repel, but there's a buoy up above showing our spot. There are people swimming around us who are the professionals who own this company, and they're checking out. We're over the top of a coral reef that had sunken into the ocean, and so it's probably about 50 to 75 yards down. that we're looking, and there's all kinds of sea life. As you can see in the picture, there's these different types of fish. We've got these bags in the front of our scooters that are filled with chum, and so these little fish are coming in, and we can see them, and you can touch them, and they'll swim away, and they'll come back. And my fear was, I'd never done this before. And so as I lay in bed the night before, I don't think of safe parrotfish or these little bitty striped fish that look kind of like a zebra. I'm not thinking about those. I'm thinking from eels, because there are eels in the sunken coral reef. I'm thinking about maybe a angry, vicious sea turtle that all of a sudden goes rabid and comes after us. And then I start thinking about barracudas, and then it goes to this Jaws moment. And I'm thinking in bed the night before, what happens if a shark appears in the water? How am I going to protect my family? Now remember, I'm in bed. I'm not even in the scooters yet. I'm lying in bed in a safe, comfortable place, and these unrealistic, unmet issues begin to roll around. And if you understand the nature of those thoughts, it revolves really about what I can do. Because I'm thinking, if a shark shows up, I've got to protect my family. Now, if I were an unhealthy father, I would think, which person am I going to leave behind to save the rest of us, right? Am I going to push on my son's scooter that it begins to drop down and the rest of us scoot away? Am I going to kick my wife off to the front so that the shark sees her first? And the old story, I don't have to run fast to the bear. I just got to run faster than the person in front of me. Hopefully they're behind me. So that's an unhealthy place. But I begin to think, what happens? And I'm an hour, I'm 2 hours, I'm 3 hours into this conversation in my head while lying in bed. That is no longer fear. If I'm in the water and I see a shark, that's fear. That's a realistic response to a realistic situation. But what happens if I'm projecting my fears into unrealistic moments? Anxiety begins to set in. It feels like fear, right? My heart races, adrenaline begins to pump. I begin to play out scenarios. I begin to perspire. My breathing increases. And all of a sudden, the anxiety takes hold, and I begin to think of, how am I going to do this, whatever this is? And here's the thing. You may never have been in an underwater scooter, but you've been in a situation, we all have, where we're about to do something that maybe is unfamiliar, or maybe is difficult, or maybe even has a little danger associated. It's a risk, and we begin to play out fears in an unrealistic way. Anxiety sets in. Now, let me just say this. This morning, there are 3 parts of this spectrum that I want us to understand when it comes to anxiety, because that's what we're talking about today. One is I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. The second one is the idea of a total anxiety. It never stops, it never turns off, and it is an extreme response. And those are the 2 ends of the spectrum. But somewhere in the middle, we sense the anxiety, we make appropriate plans, we plan ahead, we address the concerns that we or somebody else may have, and then we move forward. But oftentimes in our anxieties, those 2 extremes come in. And I want to say this, I'm not going to address an extreme mental issue, a mental health issue of anxiety, an anxiety disorder. That's not really what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about this place in the middle here where a fear has presented itself without being there. And we begin to wrestle with, how do we deal with this anxiety? Do I address the issues? How do I put this thing down? How do I get some rest and some sleep? How do I step back from that anxious moment when everything begins to stress and worry me? And I deal with it appropriately, but then I let it down and I walk away from it for a moment. And I think that as we deal with our anxieties in this moment, right? So those fears that we maybe have seen on TV, they aren't here. I don't have riders outside my door. I don't really have an issue of all the things that may be taking place are not in my living room. But when I see these things on social media or on the news, or I have conversations with people, then anxiety begins to set in, and an unrealistic fear, an unrealized fear then presents itself in a form of anxiety. And I want to know what Jesus has to say about this, because if he is the truth, which we established in week 1, then the words that he will give us will speak truth into our lives and anchor us in a place to help us to deal with it. I want you to understand, he knows the hearts of mankind. God knows that there's a place where anxiety will go to an unhealthy place, and so oftentimes he will speak into it. Now, let me give you one more word of warning. I've heard many, many times, and oftentimes it's in kind of a sarcastic tone or maybe a joke, but it says, don't tell me not to do something because then I'll begin to do it even more. And really what that says is, don't speak into my moment. We need to give permission to people to state an obvious thing. Don't be this. Don't do this. And if we allow for that word to be spoken to us, it will open us up then for truth to be shared, because Jesus is about to do that very thing. If you have your scriptures, I invite you to open up to Matthew chapter 6, and we're going to be reading verses 25 through 34. And I want you to understand that in this context of Jesus preaching, he's been talking about where do we put our trust, where do we put our future in? And he's been talking in the terms of treasures. Sometimes we kind of equate that to riches. But he says, don't bank on your treasures being here, but lay them up in heaven. Now, today's sermon isn't about that particular preaching. Today's message is going to focus on then, once he's established the truth of something eternal, then he's going to deal with something that's temporal, something that's here in the now in the flesh. And this is where the tone of that sermon changes to say, right here and now, how do we deal with these things? So starting in verse 25, read along with me in Matthew 6. And Jesus says, right off from the gate in verse 25, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet their heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And why? Why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothe the grass of the field, which is today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Now, what Jesus is saying here is he acknowledges there's something going on. I don't know that anybody who was in this sermon context that he's preaching to the disciples and this crowd gathers up, I don't know that anybody has said, Jesus, I have a question. Rabbi, I have this sense of anxiety that's setting in. How would you prescribe me to deal with this? That was probably never said. But Jesus, being who Jesus is, looks in this moment. He sees the heart. He understands the mind. He knows the thoughts. And he senses in this moment, if there's an eternal thing and there's a temporal thing and there's a thing here on this earth, then what am I going to do? How do I provide for myself? And he stops for a moment in the sermon and he says to them directly something that reveals what they are concerned about. Don't be anxious. He says it like 4 times in this passage. Now, what I love is this, is he begins to speak into things. He doesn't condemn them for having the anxiousness. He doesn't say, look, you're a fool. He does say, oh, you have little faith, but he says that in a way to teach them that faith is connected to their concerns. But he doesn't condemn them for it. In fact, what he does is he recognizes it and then he speaks into it. And he addresses it in some specific terms: what they will eat, where they will sleep, what they will wear, their life, what they put into their mouths. He says, look, these things are important. He doesn't dismiss it as a trivial item. He says, your Father knows you need these things and you need all of them. I love it that the fact that he doesn't expect them to just stop eating. He doesn't expect them to just quit living. He definitely doesn't prescribe for them to walk around naked. That is, you notice that he says these things, you're worried about them, don't be over concerned. Don't let anxiety set in. Your Father knows you need these things. So he is not saying here, you should quit doing everything. Let me do all things. You sit around and be lazy and I will work for you. He doesn't prescribe that. But what he does is something even greater. I want to point out something. In ancient literature, I've said this before, that the Mesopotamians kind of looked at the development of the gods, and the way they saw it was the gods existed first, but they were doing work. They had to provide for themselves, and they got tired of that. They got angry about having to do it. It was toilsome. It was hot. They would sweat. Whatever. So then they created mankind to do work for them, and so mankind had to harvest for the gods, and mankind had to sacrifice and go hunt for the gods, and mankind had to do all these things for the purpose of serving the gods. But look at what Jesus said. Is the only God we know of. The true God says, I will serve you. And that is a vital tone. It is a great idea to understand God's relationship to us that Jesus reveals. I'm going to go back and I want to state something very clearly. First of all, you understand that there is a conflict here of lie versus truth. I mean, if you haven't had difficulty with this in social media and news reports, right? You hear something, you go check it out, and it's hard to find what the truth is. And it can be on the far left side, it can be on the far right side, but to find out what is it that actually happened. And we struggle with that. But what we realize in that moment is that there is something that's truthful, but there are also lies that are coming in to undermine that truth. And so we have this conflict of lie versus truth. And so a lie this morning is, I must provide. Look, when Jesus says don't be anxious, it's because the people who are sitting with him, the disciples, are beginning to be concerned about how they will take care of the next meal. They're concerned about how do they take care of their bodies. And in that, the lie is, you must take care of it. It is your responsibility to hustle for it. It is your responsibility to look for it. It's your responsibility to provide for everybody else. You must take care of it. It must consume who you are. And many of us buy into that lie because we think we are the sole provider. We think if I don't pay attention to it, it's not going to be paid attention to. And then it falls through, and then I'm the one who gets either embarrassed, disappointed, or I disappoint somebody else. That is the very heart of almost all anxiety. I think women and men deal with this lie in a very different way. I think for men, it's about the disappointment of expectations. People expect me to provide, and if I don't do that, then I will lose my good name. I think for women, and these are very generalistic terms, so you may be thinking, oh, that's not me. That's okay. I'm just going to speak in generalities. I think for women, it's about relationships. It's about connections. Then we begin to think about what people think about and what people are saying about and how they've disappointed and how they have maybe have conflict and they're reading into conversations. So we both, on both sides of the gender aisle, male and female, deal with this. We just deal with it a little bit differently. But it comes from this thing here of who is going to provide in the moment. And the lie says, I'm the one. All the pressure is on me. But here's the truth that Jesus reveals. God cares for me and he provides. Do you understand when Jesus says, look, all the things you see around you, the beautiful birds, the incredible flowers, the grass, all the things that provide some beauty to this earth and landscape, your Father understands that you need things. And if he has taken care of these things that don't bear his image, there's no animal on this planet besides man that bears his image. There's no plant on this earth that bears his image. There's no grass, no matter how beautiful it may be, from pampas grass to fescue, that bears his image. There's only one created thing that bears the image of God, and it is us. And so Jesus uses these examples of lesser things to say, if God has taken care of those things, not just barely, but beautifully, then how much more will he care for us? And if he cares for us in his caring, he will provide. You see the conflict here. The lie is, I'm the one who provides. And Jesus is saying the truth is, God is the one. And when it comes to unrealistic and unrealized fear that turn into anxieties, we have to go back to this truth. The hard part is this, is that when it comes to anxieties, what happens is it has an impact on our priorities. Do you understand what that means? Right? I've got a hierarchy of decisions. I've got a list of things from top to bottom, and they have importance. And some things are more important than others. And Jesus is coming. Without saying it specifically, he reveals that when anxieties set in, if they are not dealt with, it will impact your priorities. Now, the first way it impacts is it mixes them up. Look at what he says in 6:25. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? In this moment, he is revealing that when priorities are mixed up, we focus on the things and not the giver. We begin to think we are God that has to provide these things. And so without being realistic, with it being an imagined thing, it begins to have these conversations. It begins to stir up this concern and worry. Another word for anxiety in Scripture is the interpretation of worry, that it constantly draws our attention to worry about something. And it draws our energy into that action. Not that we're solving it, we're just concerned about it. But he says in that moment, you have mixed up your priorities. You think that these things are the most important things. And its impact on us is devastating. Pharisees were concerned about the Scriptures. And we would think that's a noble thing, but they were so focused on controlling the Scriptures and not sinning that they missed what God was doing. The Scriptures for them didn't point them back to God, didn't prepare them for the Messiah, and what it did was it set up a structure that they can control. They focused on the thing and forgot the giver. That is devastation for us. Because when we think we have to provide, we become God, and all of a sudden it tears us apart. And anxieties, when unchecked, begin to filter into relationships, and all of a sudden wrong relationships become priorities, and the right relationships lose their status, and all of a sudden we begin to take things out on people that have no conscious decision of what they're doing to us, but we have perceived them coming after us. We've done that. All of us have had that issue where we had that conversation about a thing that may be filled with tension, and we took it out on a person before the tension ever actually came to reality. Not thinking ahead to dissolve it, but thinking ahead to crush it. That is the product of anxiety unchecked causing devastation. We begin to hear those conversations within our head about how worthless we are. We don't recognize the image of God being born into us. We don't realize how much God cherishes us. Now, we are not his sole focus. He is his focus, but he loves us. But in the mixed up context of devastation, we forget that. But praise God, Jesus speaks into this moment, and he says, well, there's another option here. Your priorities may be mixed up, and it may be devastating, but there's also a sense that it can fix up our priorities. Did you hear me? Anxieties can actually produce something good. Jesus comes back in Matthew 6:33, and he rearranges the priorities, right? But seek first the kingdom of God. Seek the righteousness, and all these things will be given. Jesus doesn't say, man, walk away from all the earthly stuff. You don't need those physical things. You only need to focus on me. Those things, God's not going to provide those for you. No, he says, look, I know those things are important. I know that you need food for the body. I know that you need clothing for dignity. I know you need a place to live. You need something to drink to keep hydrated. In the dry Judean desert, kind of like the dry, high plains, desert-like area that we were suffering through this week, and we're going to be seeing it again next week. He doesn't ignore the things you need, but he says, let's realign your priorities. Here's why I think he says this. Because when we understand how to fix things up, when he reveals to us the kingdom of God is first and righteousness is first, then it begins to form realignment. Why is this important? Because in his presence and in his righteousness, he teaches me how to work appropriately. In his presence, as he provides and cares for me, my priorities begin to show me what role I play in provision. How many days a week should I work? How many hours in the day should I work? What happens if I begin to feel that anxiety that takes over and I can't dismiss those thoughts about business or family or relationships or jobs or bids or financial issues, and they begin to hold on to me. But if I stop for a moment and I sense that and I realign and I go back to seek God first, I confess this, He teaches me how to give my energy into those things appropriately because they have to be addressed. But without God's presence and without righteousness, I will mess that up every single time. You see, Jesus says, I understand that you are anxious. Seek me first. All those other things will be taken care of. Maybe you don't need to focus so much on the color of clothes. Maybe you don't need to focus so much on the way that you eat. Just begin with righteousness and seeking my face first. Seek my kingdom. I'll teach you how to eat. I'll teach you how to wear clothes. I'll teach you how to interact with people. I'll teach you how to do business. I will show you. It's not so much that I'm going to see those specifics in Scripture. I'm going to see the values in Scripture. But I'll begin to feel the presence as the Holy Spirit teaches me these things. Isn't that what He promised last week? I'm going away, but I'm going to give you a helper. And it's not just that I have a buddy walking around with me. It's so that now when I have issues like this, there's a training that takes place. And maybe it's the voice of your spouse. Hey, it'd be good for you to come home. Let's try eating dinner together. And you begin to realize, rather than be defensive about this and play this conversation out where you have all these angry outbursts and you have all these arguments and all these failures you're going to bring to the table, you're going to zing them, destroy them, you're going to crush them. You say, maybe God is telling me something through my spouse. Maybe I need to figure out a different way to do this. And so when the anxiety begins to set in, it pushes me back into the presence of God and realigns my priorities. Because here's the thing, God cares for you. That is the exact words of Jesus Christ. Your Father cares for you. If we as His children can understand how to deal with these anxieties under His power because He provides for us and cares for us, then how much can we affect people's lives by teaching them those same truths, by living it out in front of them and pushing them into the same teachings of Jesus Christ? But if I start off this whole conversation and Jesus says, don't be anxious, and I step back and say, hey, don't tell me what to do, you see where the problem is? I've already determined that I'm the only person who has a word for me. And the counsel of one is never a good thing. But if I listen to those words, don't be anxious, God cares for you. Let me show you some examples of that. He begins to talk about things of nature, and then he points back to us as image-bearing children who've been saved by Jesus Christ. He cares for you. Then I begin to understand how to deal with these anxious things. I want to challenge you this week. Because of God cares, when anxiety sets in, and it's going to happen, right? It could be oil prices, it could be rain, lack of rain, it could be a storm that sets in, it could be the news of a child, it could be your job, the lack of a job, it could be tensions within your house with your spouse. When those anxiety moments set in and they want to rob you of rest and peace, what I need you to do is step back from that for a moment and remember, the truth is, Jesus revealed that God cares. Because of that, let anxiety be a catalyst driving us back to the truth. I've stepped into a moment where I'm anxious. I'm going to step back into this anchored place where I've got this spot that reminds me of who God is. You see, Jesus is saying, I'm telling you the truth. I am the revelation of truth. God cares for you. He will provide if you will seek Him first. It seems counterintuitive for me to lay something down that's causing me some problems, to focus on Him first, and then He will teach me how to pick this thing back up. It's like a little kid who's learning how to mow the yard, and they miss all kinds of stripes of grass, and there are little pieces here and there, and sometimes they miss a whole section of the yard. And the father figure, the parent, stands over to the side and says, hey, wait a minute, let me tell you something. stop that for a second. Come talk with me. The reason you're doing this is not about the yard. It's about responsibilities. It's about learning how to work hard and take responsibility and be taught and be teachable. So I want you to turn around for a second and look and see what you see. Oh man, I've missed all kinds of stuff. And then the healthy parent says, so let's go back and let's mow these again. Let me teach you something. Here's a little pattern you might want to follow. Here's how you go past the line. And it begins to give tips. So the mowing is still something that needs to be paid attention to, but the values of what we do are more important. The care to teach us how to do things. And so when that anxiety sets in, confess it. Give it to God and let it be a catalyst that drives us back to the truth that He cares. Why is that important? If we step back into this care and provision, this truth about Jesus Christ and who our Father is, then we will begin to understand the power of living. Now, there's a whole part of this I'm gonna say, take a break. Because I think Paul has some great words for us that when we have the trigger of anxiety, that there is a very good response to that from Paul's perspective, influenced by the Holy Spirit. And I want to jump into that next week. But I want us to walk away today understanding that we need to step back into the idea that God cares for us and He provides for us. And so when I feel those triggers this week, that anxiety begin to step in, capture that thought, go before God and say, God, I know you care for me. I know you provide for me. Take this from me and teach me how to deal with it appropriately. What do I need to pay attention to, and what do I need to let fall to the side? What do I need to give my energy to, and what do I need to hold my energy back and reserve it? And what do I need to provide priorities to, and what should I put further down on the list? And I promise you, I guarantee you, from experience, God is faithful through the work of the Holy Spirit to teach us those things, because we have confessed and believed that our Father cares for us and that He truly does provide for us. Isaiah 53. I want to finish off with this. He says, be strong and fear not. Now this is the term we've used before to say this is a real thing, not imagined, but it's real. But he says, do not fear, behold, your God will come with vengeance. Not just show up passively, but He will come with vengeance, with the recompense of God, and will come and save you. God speaks, and He says, look, I will do what I will do. And I will do it by my power. I will do it by my compensation. That's what Isaiah was writing about our Father. And the only reason He wants to do this is because He cares for you. So this week, are you stepping back into truth? What's your source of truth? We talked about jumping back into Scripture. What's your source of truth? Is it social media? Is it the things that you believe, your values and ideologies? Is it your political stance? What is it that's providing an anchor point? Because if it's anything other than Scripture and the work of the Holy Spirit, those things will crumble and fall apart and you'll be set adrift. But if you'll step back into Scripture, step back into presence, then when anxiety sets in, an unreal fear, perceived fear, then He will remind you, I'm present. Not only am I present, I'm providing. And our Father who loves us reminds us He cares for us, and then guess what He does? He cares for us. And we stand in that truth. And there's something good that comes from that place. We'll talk about that next week. Let's pray. Father, we are thankful that in this moment, Father, you knew that we were going to be in this place in 2020 where all these layers of concern were going to pop up. But guess what? You spoke these words through your Son that said, do not be anxious. If you, as the Father, do all of these things for items that don't carry your image, how much more as a Father will you do for those who do carry your image? And so, Father, I pray that the Holy Spirit will reveal to us those moments of anxiety, would remind us to step back into the truth that you care for us and you provide for us, that we would seek your face, and that the Holy Spirit would teach us how to deal with these things. It's one thing to see a bear and run, or play dead, or whatever the course is, but it's another thing, Father, when it's something that we imagine, it's hard to run. And so, Father, I pray that we would take hold of that, we would give it to you, and to state the truth that you care for us. And so, Father, this morning, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your care and provision. It is powerful. We pray these things in Jesus' name.
Thank you, Pastor Kevin. What a great word of where we're at today, and a challenge of taking that step back. You know, it's real easy to become anxious, especially in the world we're living in today. We're bombarded by news from every angle, from everywhere we turn. Somebody's got something different to say. Something else is going on. And so we want to just continue in prayer this morning that we will do exactly what Kevin said, that this week we'll be able to take that step back and say, where is the truth? And what is the truth? So join me in prayer. Father God, we just do thank you this morning, Father, that we've heard your word. God, that we've heard your truth. That, Father, we know that anxiety, that all those things do not come from you, but Father, you are the one who is there to help us through that, Father. Your truth is the only truth. God, you are the only one who can clear those waters, Father, in front of us. And so, Lord, today I just pray that, Father, as we go through our week, God, as we do become anxious, as we do see those things around us that trigger us and that make us stop and think and become fearful in our hearts, God, that you would quickly just remind us that we need to take that step back into you. And, Father, that you are the truth and that you will guide. And we give you all the praise and glory this morning in your name. Amen.
All right, church family, Jason, thank you for that prayer this morning. A couple of things I want to highlight before we finish out. As some of you are outside sitting on the green, hopefully you've got some good cloud cover. It's been a great morning, but we are glad that you guys came. And whether you're sitting in chairs or in your car, thank you for joining us on the green. That's our worship throughout the summer, is gathering together outside for those who can, and let's just celebrate together. So it's good. We're in a good season. Everything may be changed around us, but guess what? We're able to worship together. A couple of things I want to highlight. First of all, we're continuing on with our VBS this year, which is at homes, a backyard Bible club style VBS. Each Wednesday through the rest of July, our students will be meeting from incoming kindergarten to incoming fifth graders. So if you don't know where you belong, go to the website, the church website, cwbcperryton.org, click on VBS, and that information will come up, and you'll be able to go and figure out not only to register, but what house you belong to. We've had over 30 kids this week start off on last Wednesday. We expect more. So kids, beg your parents, get to VBS, get to that host home, and have a great time. For our incoming 6th grade through our incoming 12th grade, you guys, Summer Driven is going to be happening. It's continuing on. We meet it's tonight. It's Sunday. We meet tonight starting at 6 o'clock. We have 3 host homes. Our incoming 6th and 7th grade are at the Skipper's house. Our incoming 8th and 9th grade are over at the Brasher's house. And our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are going to be over at the Tanner's house. If you don't know what that is, you can go on the Facebook page. It's posted there. You can make a phone call, get directions, invite your friends. Go. 6 to 7:30. And we're just going to be about fellowship and studying God's Word. It's a time for us to connect. Now, something big happened this week. Okay? Actually, 2 weeks ago, First National Bank here in Perryton and in Spearman had their 35th anniversary, and they invited people to come and get a sausage wrap, and if they wanted to make a donation. And so this past week, they called Jason. Jason went, and we received over a $3,500 check that goes straight to Jireh to help pay for food. If you want to know how important that is, before the pandemic hit, we were reaching about 70 to 80 people. This past month, we've been feeding over 170 people each week. Our high number has been 187 families. That's close to 600 people, we estimate, based on family sizes. We are able to meet those needs because of the church faithfully giving. We have it set up in our budget because people have been kind to give special donations to Jireh, and because of actions like this. $3,500 is going to go to purchase more food so we can make sure families are at least getting 1 or 2 good meals each week. So we want to say thank you, First National Bank, for doing that. Keep it coming. There are a lot of good things happening. The last thing I want to tell you is this. This week, Our new youth pastor and his wife, Philip Viverito and Caitlin Viverito, are driving from Washington, D.C., coming down I-40 all the way, and this week they will arrive in Perryton. They've got their big U-Haul in tow. They got their cars, some family members, their dog Baggy. They've got a place to live, and they're going to be coming and unloading. There's a couple of things you can do. If you want to help to purchase some basic essentials, you can bring some money up to the church this week. If you want to donate a favorite restaurant gift card to maybe Smokehouse or Margaritas or wherever, the place you like to eat, bring a gift card up. And then for student workers and families and students, if you want to, be looking at the Facebook page. I'll be sending out a text. When they arrive, we're going to help them unload that big old nasty U-Haul, get them settled. That's going to be like 105 degrees outside. Way to welcome to the Texas Panhandle. We're going to help them get settled. And next Sunday, we will have Philip and Caitlin Viverito here on stage, and we will celebrate the arrival of new youth pastor. It is good. God is doing some good things in our church. We've got a new position that's opened up. Let me just say this again. It's a new position that's opened up as administrative assistant. If you're interested in that, go check it out. It's on our website. We've loaded it on Facebook. We're promoting it. It's a very narrow gap of putting in your resumes. If that's something you look at, you like that job description, submit your resumes. We'll be hiring that job soon, quickly. We've got a lot of things we've got to take care of. We expect to be back together soon, but not yet. So be patient as we worship together. God's word for us today. Those moments of anxiety set in, step back into his care and provision and proclaim him as our true God. We will worship together next week as the community, but it's been good to see you this morning. Have a great week.